I feel thoughts build up until I can't feel that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hey guys, welcome to the sentencing of the armorer in the uh, Hannah Guterres Reed trial, and so we are just starting to get some coverage, some footage from the courtroom. Uh, Totally different setting. Look how small the courtroom is in New Mexico. Look how clear the footage is as well. It's quite refreshing. We've actually got the media, with their cameras in court, which is why the footage is so much better. Of course, when the media have the option of, or the prerogative of having their cameras in the court, it takes to some extent the initiative out of the court's hands to some extent. Obviously, in Idaho, they want to maintain that initiative. There's the prosecutor, Carrie Morrissey. I think these might be some of Alina's supporters, some of her family, some of her friends. Um, I think we know that. Isn't that a prosecutor? Isn't that Mamie Mitchell's lawyer? One also wonders whether Alec Baldwin is actually watching this, because obviously, and there she is, there's Hannah, looking quite different to the last time we saw her. She's looking pretty frail. I don't know, she looks a little unhappy, doesn't she? She definitely looks very different to the last time we saw her. But just think about the quality of the images we're seeing here compared to the courtroom we've just been in. It seems to be far more fluid. It seems to be that they're able to zoom in and change cameras and have a full screen. The officer behind Hannah was on scene. He's one of those who testified against her. Um, Hannah looking very different the third time round. We've seen her with blue and yellow hair. We've seen her looking very posh in like a pinstriped suit, and now she's looking somewhere in between those two, a little bit draggled, a little. She looks tired and worn out, I would say. If she looks that way after just how long has it been, then one wonders how she's going to deal with the more time in prison. It's interesting how certain people who have been in prison or in jail, you're in jail until you're sentenced, then it's prison. But it's interesting how, like Michelle Troconis,
I'm calling is State of New Mexico versus Hannah
I've also
Gutierrez,
seen her subsequent to
D101CR
being. She also
202340.
looks like she's
Parties state
aged
their name.
several years in a couple of weeks.
Carrie Morrissey and
But there's
Jason
some
Ellis on
people
behalf of the state of
who
New Mexico.
appear absolutely
Good morning, Your Honor.
fine. I
Jason
mean,
Bowles
Amanda
from
Knox
Criminal
appeared
Justice Here for
radiant
Ms. Gutierrez Reed, who's also present.
during her court
All right,
appearances.
thank you. All right, this is a
Interesting
sentencing.
how
Let's proceed.
they are now sitting in a different quadrant of the courtroom this time round. Do we have audio?
Let's get the microphone on.
Maybe if I plug in my earphones, we will
Your Honor,
have audio.
I wasn't sure exactly what recommendation would be appropriate in this unprecedented case until last week when I completed the review of Ms. Gutierrez's jail calls. It was my sincere hope during this process that there would be some moment when Ms. Gutierrez took responsibility, expressed some level of remorse that was genuine, and that moment has never come. Ms. Gutierrez continues to refuse to accept responsibility for her role in the death of Helena Hutchins.
It's important.
Rather than accept responsibility, she has chosen to place blame on the witnesses who testified against her, me, you, the jurors, the set medic, and the paramedics who tried to save Ms. Hutchins' life. Her jail calls, and there were probably close to 200 of them, tell us who Ms. Gutierrez really is. And in the state's opinion, the content and tone of her calls demonstrates that Ms. Gutierrez should not receive any type of a reduced sentence. Helena Hutchins died due to a cascade of safety violations that began with Ms. Gutierrez introducing live rounds to the movie set, loading one into a prop gun, telling the members of the crew that it was a cold gun, thereby ensuring that it would make its way into the hands of Mr. Baldwin. That conduct, absent responsibility or remorse, is deserving of a sentence of 18 months in the Department of Corrections with a designation as a serious violent offender, and that is what the state will be requesting today. And those are the only arguments I intend to make in terms of sentencing. I would like to move into the presentation of the witnesses who would like to address the court on behalf of Ms. Hutchins and her family.
Thank you.
I would like to start with Craig Mizrahi. Mr. Mizrahi.
Often in the trial phase, you don't see the emotions stripped out. In the sentencing phase, it's almost all emotion.
Your Honor, my name is Craig Mizrahi, and I was Helena's agent. I was compelled to be present today.
Okay, is your mic on? Can you
Yes.
talk a little into the microphone?
More into the mic. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I was compelled to be present today to express the impact of the loss of Helena, who was a cherished friend, wife, mother, and artist, senselessly lost on October 21st, 2021. I was first introduced to Helena when a mutual friend sent me samples of her cinematography. I was pleasantly surprised to see how mature and refined it was, especially given the small budgets she was working with. I imagined what she could do if given the time and resources of a large film, and I instantly knew I wanted to work with her. What stood out for me was her passion, her intense preparation, her resourcefulness and creativity on set, and the kindness and generosity she showed to all those she worked with. In getting to know her husband, Matt, it was clear that he and their son, Andros, supported every career move she made and accepted the very difficult reality that she would have to travel for work very often. This rare combination of talent, work ethic, collaboration, and family support was what truly set her apart. In 2021, Helena's star continued to rise. Her name was mentioned around Hollywood as someone to watch, and just 2 weeks before she began on Rust, Helena got her first meeting on a big studio film. She came in a close second for that job, and instead of focusing on why it didn't go her way, she felt great confidence that she was finally playing with the big boys. When Rust came her way, she felt excited for the visual challenge that a Western would bring. She enjoyed meeting the director, Joel, and believed in his vision for the film, so we went for it. 2 days before she died, Helena called me. It was very late, but she wanted to say she just had dinner with Joel and Alec, and she was so happy to be working with them. She felt the film would be a great next step and was excited for what was to come in 2022. I agreed and said, sleep well, tomorrow's another big day. That was the last time I spoke to Helena. October 21st was a fateful day that would change the lives of so many. Most of all, Andros, who at 9 years old, would have to somehow comprehend the terrifying reality of losing his mother in this way. In the time that's passed, while the pain persists, the circumstances surrounding the disaster force upon us so many questions, with one in particular above all: how could this have happened? It's my opinion that, generally speaking, film producers are responsible to ensure the cast and crew members hired are experienced enough to handle their jobs. And when it comes to hiring the armorer on a Western, I believe safety is the only job. So when the producers hired someone with virtually no experience to not only be the armorer, but also the assistant prop master, two very challenging positions in their own right, they made a crucial decision to put the safety of their cast and crew on the back burner.
Now she's crying.
As for Ms. Gutierrez-Reed, it's my opinion that she should not have held either position, much less both.
Now that
But that once
her
accepted, the responsibility
fate is on the
should have
line,
been
now
taken more
she's really
seriously.
emotional.
Sadly, it wasn't, and we all know the result. Since that terrible day, I've spoken with hundreds of producers, film executives, and directors about how we can come together as an industry to make us safer from gun violence. But the truth is that if Ms. Gutierrez-Reed and the producers of Rust simply followed the decades-old written guidelines for the film industry, specifically the use of firearms and ammunition, this tragedy would never have happened. In that sense, I hope we can all agree that this was not a simple accident. It was a chain of events that led to the killing of someone, and that chain would have been broken if the armorer was doing the job she was hired to do. I often think about what Helena's future would have been, and it makes me smile. I can assure you it would have been bright, filled with spending time with Andros and watching him grow up. She would have been able to help her support her family in Ukraine, especially when they needed her most through the horror of war. She would have traveled the world shooting beautiful images and eventually becoming the director that would change hearts and minds with her poignant and purposeful storytelling. In the end, she'd likely finish her career as she started, at the American Film Institute, getting back to the next generation of filmmakers. Sadly, we'll never know because Helena's life was taken away from us.
Leah, this is the agent. This
So today
is
we stand
Alina's
determined to seek
agent.
justice for Helena, to hold accountable those responsible for her death, and to ensure that such a tragedy never occurs again. I want to thank Ms. Morrissey and her team for having me here today, and thank you, Your Honor, for your service in the case.
Thank you.
Emilia Mendieta.
Thanks a lot, Janine.
Your Honor, my name is Emilia Mendieta. I was one of Helena's best friends and one of her colleagues and a classmate of hers at the American Film Institute Conservatory. Helena and I met on August 2013 in the registration line on our first day at the American Film Institute Conservatory. I was quietly suffering through a small bout of imposter syndrome and desperately trying to hide my nerves about officially starting the cinematography program. I don't think I was hiding them very well because this joyful, energetic woman bounced right over to me and invited me out to lunch. We then piled into a RAV4, already chock full of film gels and diffusion that almost hid the baby seat in the back from view, and off we went. After a quick burrito and some pastries, we headed back to campus for our first orientation sessions. We are friends ever since. But that was Helena, a joyful soul who could just as easily strike up a friendship as she could
Speak
capture
slower.
image.
Speak slower.
Even while at AFI, Helena stood out as an exceptional artist and cinematographer. She was creative and ambitious and quickly became well known for her skills and insistent pursuit of excellence. The first time I got to work with her was on her second film on her first year. I was on her camera team. Her love and passion for lighting was evident, and you could tell that she was masterful in her approach even then. I'm pretty sure she used every single light on the grip and lighting truck, but she used them well. It's also the film where I broke a blue streaks filter that she had borrowed from one of her classmates as I was rushing to get it to her. As I showed her the filter shards, apologizing profusely because I felt I had ruined her project, I could see she was disappointed, not at me, but at the fact that she would have to rethink her meticulously planned creative approach. a feat she accomplished as she went along with the rest of the day. As I was profusely apologizing yet again, she pulled me into a big hug and said, "Emmy, it's just a filter. They break. Friendships don't break over a filter." Despite the great filter incident of the first year, we went on to collaborate on most projects at AFI and beyond. At first, we crewed for each other on our first year films, our visual essays, and our first feature films. After that, as our careers grew, we leaned on each other for emotional and technical support. She even stepped in front of the camera for a music video I shot and directed, despite her aversion to being on that end of the lens, like most cinematographers. "But only for you, Emmy, and only this once," she quipped, as she stared down my gaffer sweating on the sidelines with a stare that read, "I know where that light should go, and you better not put it where it should be." I loved being on her sets or just talking with her about what she was going to do, because she was always trying something new, something innovative. She was luminous and endlessly curious. Helena would research how she wanted to accomplish something and make it happen. She had this uncanny ability to balance her career ambitions, her family life, and still lead a thriving social life. I admire.
If I may say something, if I could advise this person, I would say, look, Alina has died. What the court wants to do is get a sense from you of who she was and what she's lost. By running through this whole thing, the way she is reading it, there's not really much heart there, right? In other words, take a pause, look around you, and think about the first thing that comes into your mind or into your heart about who this person was. Try and convey that to the jury, right? What she's doing here is not terribly helpful. Maybe it's helpful to herself.
As our lives and careers grew and we got busier, we'd try to meet up for a meal every month or so. It was often lunch, followed by a brisk walk, and usually ending with a coffee and pastry.
Thanks a lot, Lisa.
She had a big sweet tooth. Whenever we would sit down to eat, she'd always look at the dessert menu first. She favored pastries with chocolate, but she liked cookies too. I make decorated sugar cookies for my friends on Christmas, dropping them off the second week of December. Every year without fail, not even an hour after I drop off hers at her house, she'd text me pictures of the empty cookie bag, followed by some of her and her son happily eating them all in one sitting. Sometimes her son would come along with us on our outings, bouncing with energy. Her spirit buried in him. Her little man, she would call him. Her husband and her son were her boys, and she often spoke of them lovingly. Helena was proud of being a mom and often spoke about how the experience changed her life, sometimes even egging me on to have kids whenever I did find a partner. And motherhood was important to her, but I think people were important to her, and she prioritized them. A lesson I've taken to heart since her passing, and a balance that most of us in the industry struggle to achieve on a daily basis sometimes. Helena was also a social butterfly, the quintessential extrovert that had a knack for somehow going to every single event she was invited to, and being bright and bubbly and charismatic. Most of her friends were introverts, though, myself included. We'd like to joke that she had collected a small gaggle of us along the way and made sure we showed up to these events too. She would call you up whenever to talk to you about going to an event, and one that my own little introverted heart maybe would have not dared gone otherwise. And she would make sure you weren't left alone. She made a point to take care of us and include us. I appreciate that. It was, still is, so hard to come out of my shell, and she made things easier socially. Now, whenever I go to an event and I'm doubting whether I should go, I ask myself, what would Helena do? The answer is usually go. Late in the summer of 2021, I got a call from her. I was prepping for my third feature film that was starting filming in a week away, and I hadn't heard from her much since I knew she had been on a different project in Canada for most of the summer. "I'm at LAX," she said happily. "Do you have any suggestions of where I can have good food in Santa Fe?" She knew I had family in New Mexico at the time and had spoken lovingly about New Mexican cuisine before. "What are you doing in New Mexico?" I asked, pouring out a small list of recommendations. "I'm shooting a Western." She sounded really excited. It had been a dream for both of us to shoot genre films. It's so hard to land a genre job sometimes, and she has a soft spot for both Westerns and hard sci-fi. I was really excited for her too, and reveled at her good fortune on the phone. "It has horses and gunfights, and we're shooting out in the desert. It's a huge stepping stone for me. It's going to be so much fun," she said excitedly. And she felt it, that it could be the project that could actually help her career propel forward. Little did we know that it would be the project that killed her. I often think about that moment her excitement, her joy at embarking at this new adventure. I think about how hard she worked to get there, to get that opportunity. It kills me a little inside. The last time we spoke was the day before Russ started shooting. I called her because a friend of mine gifted me 4 tickets to Disneyland that would expire by the end of the year. And I thought it would be a really nice gesture to invite Helena and her boys to the park for the day. She seemed excited about going to the park. She hadn't been in a while and felt it could be a good break after the shoot. She mentioned pre-production had been a bit hectic and stressful, but nothing that seemed out of the ordinary in the independent film world. I've since begun to question what is and isn't normal, and what should be happening and shouldn't. But I was fresh off my own low-budget feature experience and had a bit of the blues regarding some of my own challenges with that shoot. I confided my doubts in my career with her, my insecurities at the moment. Just another bout of imposter syndrome. She got called to a last-minute meeting. She had to go. Emmy, you're so young and so talented. I have no doubt that you'll make it in this industry. I believe in you. I believe you're an amazing cinematographer in person. Please remember that. Gotta go. We'll talk soon. Love you. Those were the last 4 words she ever said to me. I believe in you. Those 4 words will forever echo in my soul. They're a bright light in the darkness of this whole situation. They keep me going when times get tough, and times have been tough. I was working at a news station in Sacramento, California on October 21st, 2021, but I heard the news through the grapevine. One of my mentors called me to tell me something had happened on a set in New Mexico. They wanted to know if I'd spoken to Helena. I'd not. I was able to get in contact with her husband, who confirmed the worst. I confirmed the news to another one of our mentors. I heard his heart break over the phone, too. I sat alone in the darkness of my apartment for hours, sobbing uncontrollably. My wonderful, generous, adventurous friend was gone. Killed on a set because a live bullet that was in a prop gun. It dawned on me. Someone didn't do their job right. A lot of someones didn't do their job right. I'm also director of photography. I trained at the same school, graduated the same year, got the same degree. We belong to the same organizations, went to the same networking events, pursue the art of visual storytelling with the same passion. I've been on sets with guns. I've been on sets where blanks were fired at my camera. I know what an armorer's job is. I know the safety procedures that must be followed. And as more and more details of the case came out, it boggled my mind how many of these procedures had been either blatantly disregarded or not followed at all. Helena's death is the result of a massive system failure, where many links of the chain were loose or faulty, and they all failed her, all of them.
Well said.
But it all boils down to a very simple question. Why was there a live bullet on set?
No, that's not the real
A live
question.
bullet should never have made this way onto the set,
It's not
let
just
alone
the
the
question.
gun. Full stop. And that is where Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, as the armorer on Rust, failed Helena. It was her job to check the guns, check the bullets, and make sure that the set was safe. Even 2.5 years later, her absence still catches me by surprise. Every time I go to a networking event, I still glance at the door, expecting Helena to walk in, her platinum blonde pixie cut perfectly coiffed, leather cuffs on her wrist, naturally cool with her signature adventurous glint in her eye. At her funeral, I saw the house she never spent a single night in, the one she had bought just before coming to New Mexico. I almost called her after watching Dune Part 2 to see what she thought of it, and remembered that she died before she was even able to watch Part 1. I wanted to tell her about the amazing experience I had on set a month and a half ago, about how much I had gelled with the director and the producer and was proud of the work I'd done. I haven't been able to bring myself to make Christmas cookies in the past 2 years. The thought of not seeing her weighing heavily on me. What's left of the film gels that were in the back of the car that first day we met are now in my living room. The last vestiges of her that I was able to salvage. Her 45th birthday was last week. I went to her grave instead of having dinner and celebrating with her. And while I feel her absence personally, the industry at large feels her loss deeply. I lost one of my best friends, but the industry lost a true visionary. We were robbed of all the images she had the ability to create, all the films she didn't shoot. Her son will grow up without his mother, her family continuing on without her. I know we can never get her back, but what I want is change and justice. I want those that had a hand in her death, either through action or inaction, to face the consequences of those decisions. This includes Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. I ask the court to give her a sentence commensurate and fair to her actions in the role of the death of my dear friend Helena Hutchins. Holding Ms. Gutierrez-Reed accountable will reverberate beyond just the sentencing. It reminds everyone in this industry that actions taken to compromise the safety of our workplace, even if unintentionally, have serious consequences. There are people that leave an indelible mark on your soul, an imprint that can never be erased. And the memory of her wit, her kindness, and her unwavering belief in me are permanently etched into mine. She always had my back, and I promised her that I would always continue to have hers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the last 5 minutes, 3
Your Honor, I'd
minutes
like to
were very
switch
good. A
to
good ending
the
there.
Google Meet speakers.
She definitely ended that off very, very well.
If I can approach, because I can't see from my computer exactly how long.
I wonder whether we can have a remote testimony. Also wonder whether we're going to reach this point in the
Okay, great.
Baldwin
Let's,
trial. Is it going
let's
to go to
begin
trial?
with,
Is he going to be convicted? Is there going to be a
Anek
sentencing?
Rapini.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay, great. My name is Anak Rabanal, and I thank the court for this opportunity to speak about the impact of Helena's killing on me. I know I'm supposed to address the court today, but in writing this, it felt more appropriate to address my friend, colleague, creative partner, and playmate, since we never had the chance to say goodbye. Oh, woman, where do I even start? I'm having a flashback to helping you write your AFI application. At least then you were there to talk it out and have a little bicker, as was our typical dynamic. Instead, it's just me alone, staring at a blank page, listening to silence. Why don't we start with the hard stuff first? The stuff that's been pinging around in my head for the last couple of years. They say that death comes in threes. Within the space of a month in the fall of 2021, you were the third death of someone who had been fundamental in shaping my adult understanding of myself in the world. As if you need me to come at you with more Hamlet in the afterlife. But it truly was, when sorrows come, they come not single spies, but in battalions. As I processed the reality of the news that had reached me, there were three thoughts that kept coming up. What a terrible, painful, scary way to die. Over and over again, I kept seeing you in my mind's eye suffering needlessly, feeling you fight a battle that you were going to lose. And then I kept thinking, what's going to happen to Andros? And then selfishly, how will we ever resolve our reconciliation? That August, when you remembered my birthday out of the blue, it was like, maybe it's time to heal the 2.5-year rift that had silenced a bond that had, for the majority of its decade-long duration, consisted of communicating almost daily. But then that wasn't possible anymore. You were gone. There were so many wonderful things that would never happen again. Indulging you in story time before bed during a shoot so that you could fall asleep on the phone while I drone on so you could dream of our brain baby. Who knew that was a weirdly us thing? Because you should see the faces of other DPs when I ask them if they need a nighttime tuck-in. There will be no more hanging out in your kitchen, trying not to eat too many squirrels before going on some kind of adventure. Because who knew what the bathroom situation would be whilst you teach me random words in Russian, and I'd watch you make cracked out Turkish coffee with orange peel as pre-game fuel. The two of us always plotting how we would get something epic done with very little money, sorting out our next tag team Thelma and Louise racket. Never again would I be your habitual +1 to some crazy inspirational thing where we'd be in full-on Lucy and Ethel mode, dead set on meeting the celebrity VIP who was in attendance. And usually we did, because really, who could resist our Wonder Twin charms? There will be no more fraught existential conversations about what we were doing with our lives and careers. or any more big dreams, ideas cooked up together to be kicked down the road for when we'd have the resources and enough clout to do them. You and me, none of our ideas ever liked a small budget. Thank goodness we managed 3 times with what we had to push out some of our kids into the world. Almost every day, my Facebook memories feed reminds me of some kind of trouble we were up to and some dream we were manifesting into reality. Daily, it reminds me of the 2 people who are gone, you and the person you inspired and expected me to be. As crazy making as you could be, because let's not gild the lily. Anyone who ever truly got to know you knew how stubborn, determined, and no holds barred you could get when you set your mind to something, and how diplomacy wasn't your way. Yet as crazy making as that could be, you would bring out the best of me. Even if that involved breaking some eggs, so to speak, and you'd bring out the best in every person you engaged with. Recent events have made me come to appreciate how with you, I didn't need a filter or to tone it down or to say it in a nice way. And the gift of being with someone who can accept the light and the dark in you is a rare, rare thing in this world. Even more rare is someone who is courageous enough to show up as authentically as you did. And here's the part that's easy, talking about what I admired in you, your courage and tenacity. I mean, you could spin your wheels in a neurotic frenzy, but when push came to shove, you would dig in, face your fears, and grab hold of your courage and
Tell
go.
Reed,
The fact that
looking
you
straight
moved
into
to
the
a foreign
camera.
country on your own as a young adult to pursue a dream is testament enough to your indomitable spirit, and it didn't stop there. You lived every single moment you had, and you never met a challenge you didn't give your best shot to. I admired your love of beauty and how you sought it out everywhere you looked. Maybe it came from having terrible eyesight when you were a kid, but you looked at the world with wonder and intensity. Your search for different ways of touching and feeling with your eyes, and your inability to settle if something wasn't the way it should be, was one of the commonalities that held us together. And truth be told, the bedrock of trust that got us through the rockier patches, because neither of us would let each other be less than our best. I admired your innocence of being. You approached everything with the ingenuity and insouciance of a child, and that takes guts in a world that continually tries to turn us into jaded, beaten down cynics. This is the short list of things that I love and still love about you. With you gone, I find myself worrying about Andros, praying that he will have had enough of you and your vision to treasure the gift that was being born into this life with you as his mother. I still remember the day I visited you, him, and Nat after he was born, thinking, shit, he's one brave bitch doing this motherhood thing. While your death is what one might call meaningless, as in it was wholly unnecessary and preventable, I pray that it will echo through time to ensure that its circumstances will not be repeated anywhere else and with anyone else. I pray that it will serve as a rallying point for the systemic change needed in an industry that sees the human beings who put their lives in service of it as dispensable cogs in a machine to serve bottom lines and shareholder expectations. You always fought the good fight, and your death will count for something more than the sadness and regret that it's left in its wake. Every one of us whose lives you touched owe you that. When I started writing this, I went to look back for that very first picture of the 2 of us together, so that I could have something with you, something of you with me today. December 25th, 2011. It's funny to think in hindsight that we were the universe's Christmas present to each other. Our friends who introduced us were happy that we were both getting our starts in film and hoped it would be a good connection. Who knew that that Christmas would lead here? If only it had led to what we both dreamt together. Being fabulous older ladies at some glamorous parties after being awarded some big accolades and driving everyone around us crazy because we'd still be bickering and nitpicking on how we could have made the film better. I miss you, my friend. I'm sorry we won't be able to say the things that needed to be said, the apologies that needed to be exchanged. It's painful to know that we won't grow old together. All I can do now is promise you that I'll do my best to live up to being the person and artist you knew and wanted me to be, and to do my utmost to uphold your legacy. And now I thank the court for permitting me this time to share the impact of Helena's death on me, and to ask it to do what it should to bring justice to this situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Olia Oparina?
Very powerful, and also a different way. She
Thank you, Your Honor.
she addresses Alina
Helena and I
directly in
immigrated
that
to the
tribute.
U.S. around the same time, bonding over our shared passion for film. From the moment we've met, she became more than a friend. She was my sister in every sense of the word. Helena was always there, celebrating our victories and offering unwavering support during our toughest moments as immigrants and young filmmakers. As a mother, a talented cinematographer, and a successful woman, Helena juggled numerous responsibilities, yet she always made time for her friends. Our daily hikes were not just about exercise. They were moments of solace and connection, where Helena's words of encouragement lifted my spirits without fail. Together as female filmmakers, we confronted the obstacles of our industry, finding strengths in each other's company. Helena poured her heart into every project, infusing it with generosity and kindness that left a lasting impact on everyone she worked with. Her presence on set was a beacon of light, spreading joy wherever she went. She often overlooked her own needs, prioritizing others above herself. When Helena passed away, I was consumed by grief, feeling the loss of not only my closest friend, but also my greatest source of inspiration. She represented hope for a brighter future in the film industry, where creativity and kindness could thrive. Losing her meant losing a part of myself and a cherished creative collaborator. Though she may no longer be with us, Helena's legacy lives on in the hearts of all who knew her. We are committed to honoring her memory by continuing to champion the values she held dear, ensuring that her impact on the world will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Metz? Okay.
And Jen White.
Okay, Jen White.
So that attorney in the blue jacket is Gloria Allred. I think, didn't she also represent Amber Frey?
It feels impossible to put into words the devastation that I felt and will forever feel from the loss of my friend Helena Hutchins, because mere words could never hold all of who she was or what she meant to me. It is absolutely indescribable, but I will try anyway. 2.5 years have passed and I still look for her. I still expect to see her. I still wonder what adventure she's on and think about checking in. Then my heart drops through my feet. And I have to face the reality that I will never see her or hug her or hear her laugh ever again. I will never get to feel that glow that she bathed everyone around her in. And I will never get to be there to celebrate what would have undoubtedly been many, many. Helena was a force. She was complicated and talented and beautiful and caring and kind and funny and committed and charming and weird and fearless. She was all of my favorite adjectives. She inspired me, and I don't think she knew that because I never got to tell her. She was one of my favorite people in the world. I feel like she has gotten lost in the swarm of all of the finger pointing and blame in the aftermath of this completely preventable tragedy. The only way I have left to honor her is to do everything I can to make sure this never happens again and to try to make sure that the people responsible are held accountable. I've struggled to deal with this repeatedly being called an accident because it was not an accident. It was negligence and nothing else. Every single day there is gunplay on film sets carried out safely by qualified armorers. There are countless checks and balances to ensure safety for the cast and crew, and it seems every single one of them was ignored on this production. There were multiple failures by multiple people, that is certain, and the actions of Hannah Gutierrez-Reed were the catalyst for Helena's death. By bringing live ammunition to set, Ms. Gutierrez-Reed set off a chain of events that could only lead to someone being killed, which was ensured by her not properly checking the rounds, by her leaving guns and ammunition unattended, by allowing the assistant director to take the gun from her, and by allowing Helena to be in the path of that bullet in the first place. Multiple breaches in protocol committed by the defendant made this inevitable, and it was only a matter of time. There's one absolute truth here. If Ms. Gutierrez-Reed had properly done her job, Helena would still be alive, and Andros would still have his mother. Your Honor, I beg you to impose the maximum sentence. It will not be and could never be enough of a punishment for the willful negligence committed by the defendant. But she needs to be held accountable for taking Helena's life and for destroying so many others. It doesn't seem to me or anyone that I've spoken to that Ms. Gutierrez-Reed has ever demonstrated even the slightest bit of remorse for her actions, and instead chooses to throw blame at everyone but herself. If prison time is the only way she will face any responsibility for what she has done, it should be for as long as the law allows. Because the ripples of her negligence will never stop being felt by those of us who knew and loved her.
Come on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joel Souza.
Well,
The other
Joel
person
Souza
was
as
on,
well.
That Metz, Stephen Metz.
Oh, okay. Then let's go ahead and do Mr. Metz instead of Mr.
Quite
Souza.
surprised that Joel
We'll hear from
Souza
Mr. Souza last.
is speaking. I'm not sure why. He just seemed quite tepid in court.
Hello, I'm Stephen Metz. And I did prepare a statement, so I'm just going to read the statement off and then maybe have a little bit. The death of Helena Hutchins has had a profound impact on me and my family. I was a very close friend of Helena and her family for many years. Our sons have been best friends since they were 4 years old. And Helena's husband, Matt, was one of my best friends. Helena and I would talk a lot about extreme sports. We spent time biking, riding, rock climbing with our kids when she was not out of town working, which was quite a bit. Matt and I would hang out and let our kids play. They played together all the time. During the pandemic, it was really nice because Helena was not working for a good part of it, and we were able to spend a lot of time together. If you remember, during the pandemic, there were kind of these certain families that you could, we called them a pod. So you could, we kind of hung out with like just a very select and few families, and the Hutchins family was one of them.
Wonder whether we'll hear from her husband.
So we would hang out in person.
Or even her son.
We didn't wear masks because they were considered, our really close friends. As far as the impact that I have seen so far, Matt was devastated when he lost the love of his life. I know how much he loved Helena. They were married for over 16 years, and they were a wonderful couple. The loss is devastating to everyone who knew them, because it turns out, after everything is said and done, we've not only lost Helena, but we've also lost Matt. And basically, Matt has been affected, trapped horribly by this, and he moved away. So basically, Matt died.
Sure.
When Helena died, as far as we're concerned. Meaning he moved away. He was somebody that I hung out with more than once or twice a week on average.
Sure.
And so in Helena's passing and in the negligence that I believe occurred on that set, you didn't only kill or affect Helena, which I know it goes without saying, but it still should be said. You affected many other families and people around Helena. So anyway, the loss of Helena has had a ripple effect on our whole community. She was a talented cinematographer and she was loved by everyone who knew her. Her death is a reminder of the fragility of life, and it has left us shaken and sad. That's an understatement. There's really there's no excuse. I mean, if you have a professional on the set, now I don't know all the protocol for film, that's not my field, but I do know that you have to take gun safety you have to be handled with extreme caution in every way. And I really feel that this was due to negligence. So being that there are thousands and thousands of films being made all over the world, this needs to set a precedence. This case needs to set a precedence for all of the other, for all the other actors whose lives and cinematographers and everyone on the set really, whose lives are at risk with when we have negligence in the hands of an armor or supposed armor. So anyway, it was a horrible experience for not just the Hutchins family, but also for our family. My son basically lost his really good friend. I honestly don't even know if they really talk very much anymore. They used to talk almost every day and play video games together. And it was a tragedy. So very, very sad. And that's the end of my statement.
I just want to pause it there to note that he feels that he's even lost Matt. At some point, he actually said, Matt was my friend. I thought about that and I thought, no, isn't he still your friend? But it seems like he's not. You know that Matt made some sort of deal with Alec Baldwin. Matthew Hutchins, Alina's husband, was initially suing Baldwin, but he's now made a deal with Baldwin to share in the profits of the film. That's something that I was definitely disappointed in. What I really liked about his testimony here, his sharing, is that he kind of addressed the camera, that he basically spoke from the heart, not necessarily reading from a statement. And that's also important, just to remember where you are, when you are, what is going on, right?
Thank you.
Joel Souza.
Now, the director of Rust, he was standing right behind Alina and he was shot in the shoulder. He could just as easily have been killed himself.
Yes, we can hear you.
He was very muted in trial. Let's hear what he says.
I would like to thank the court as well as Ms. Morrissey and her team for allowing me to speak today. I've struggled with what to say here today because what I want is simply not possible. I want that none of this ever happened, that everyone's okay and that lives weren't destroyed. And that, worst of all, his life wasn't lost. I would not presume to speak for Helena, nor for her husband or her son, for her parents or her sister, but I would like to say something on their behalf, if I might. Helena's parents lost their daughter. Her sister lost a sibling and confidant. Matt lost his wife, the other half of himself. And Helena's son lost not only his mother, but everything she had to offer him for the rest of her life. Every kind word, every loving gesture, every support, every influence, every life's lesson, the course of his life has been irrevocably altered. And the world lost not only a person that was a gifted artist, but a truly kind and compassionate person, which often seem to be in short supply these days. As for myself, the last 2.5 years are difficult to put into words. What it's done to me and the burdens it's placed on me, both emotionally and physically, are my private burdens, and I think I'll choose to keep them that way today. What I will say is that one moment the world made sense, and the next moment it didn't, and it still doesn't, and I don't know if it ever will again. So again, what I really want, I can't have. I want everyone damaged by Miss Reed's failures that day to find peace. I want this whole thing not to have been consumed by the world as some sick form of mass entertainment. I want to still believe in the better angels of our nature. I want the pain to go away. I want to be who I was before this happened, and above all, I want Helena to be back home with her husband and son in the house she never got to live in. Helena not only had an incredible talent for her art, but she had a talent for life. She was a touchstone for all who knew her, and those of us who were lucky enough to have shared in her fleeting time on this planet are better for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a brief written statement by one of Helena's friends, Anya Bay, and that will be read by Alexander James.
No reference to Alec Baldwin there from the director. Probably legally sensitive anyway, but I think that was more interesting for what he didn't say.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anya Bay. I'm a filmmaker and a very close friend of Helena Hutchins. I want to apologize for not being able to attend in person because of my last-minute trip overseas, but I'm very grateful for the state for reading my statement. I've known Helena since 2014 when I first moved to LA. It was impossible not to connect and fall in love with her instantly, as she was that bright beam of light, creativity, and energy that could easily ignite the room, if not the entire city. Her passion for cinema was infectious. Her ability to enjoy life and love people around was evident. I felt very privileged to have her by my side, encouraging all of my endeavors. As my family lives far away, Helena became one of a few people that formed my family circle in Los Angeles. We traveled and celebrated holidays together. We supported each other through thick and thin, and of course, we created beautiful films together. We were working side by side, Helena as a director of photography, and I was a writer/producer. We collaborated on multiple amazing projects, including our very first feature film, which was almost impossible to make. But not for Helena. She didn't believe in impossible. She was a fearless leader with a unique creative vision and deep appreciation for her crew. And I know that hundreds of people can back me up on that. She was a true inspiration. We had many more plans to realize and dreams to fulfill together, and it still doesn't sit with me that it's never going to happen. Helena was a very loving mother and wife, daughter and sister, friend and cinematographer. She was a cinematographer with a capital C, perhaps the most dedicated filmmaker I know, who would always go an extra mile, if not 100 miles, only to take the best shot regardless of how hard it was. Just when finally, after all these years of hard work, she started to get recognized in Hollywood, which we all know could be very cruel and heartbreaking. This horrible turn of events during the production of Rust should have never happened. Set safety should never be overlooked, or, as in this case, completely and utterly disregarded, especially when it comes to weapons. I want to end with this. The tragic death of the incredible Helena Hutchins is not just a huge loss for her family, friends, and people that knew and loved her so much. It's a loss for the entire film community. She deserved better. Thank you. Thank you.
So I just want to pause there. It does seem that she was about to make a breakthrough. She was sort of this was like perhaps her biggest break. And then that's what happened. You know, she loses her life kind of on her biggest break. I must say I disagree a little bit where, to say I wish we could have Helena back. Obviously, I mean, that's a non-negotiable. I don't mean to be nasty, but if you're in a courtroom wishing that someone who's died is still alive, that's so far beyond where we are. That's not going to happen. So wishing that it's going to happen is not going to happen. Wishing this, wishing that, none of that. What we would do in court is be scientists and people following evidence, not wishy-washy, and not I wish I did this or I wish I did that. It's about what did happen, right? I do appreciate that sentencing hearings are really just kind of dress rehearsal for the sentencing. The judge has already made up her mind. The judge has already decided. It's really for the public's benefit to kind of get closure. The sentencing hearing is everything that the trial isn't. It's emotional, it's sentimental, it's not necessarily factual. It's important, but it's not really part and parcel of the legal mechanics, the trial, the evidence, all the precedents and all the mechanisms that go into the charges and the ultimate sentence. So just to be clear about that.
Thank you.
Gloria Allred will address the court on behalf of Helena's mother, father, and sister.
So Gloria is the lawyer representing Mamie Mitchell, the script supervisor, and also previously represented Amber Frey. I wrote a little bit about her and Amber when I wrote my three books on Scott Peterson. Gloria Allred is basically suing Alec Baldwin on behalf of the script supervisor. I wonder whether there's going to be much discussion between Gloria and Carrie. Looks like there might be. I think this should be quite a strong statement from her because of who she is. This guy in the background just doesn't seem to know that he's on camera. He's been picking at his teeth, but he did something similar during the actual trial. Hannah definitely showing so much more emotion this time around. Anyway, let's hear what Gloria has to say. Catherine, thanks for joining us.
Your Honor. Attorney Gloria Allred, Morocco, and Goldberg, and also on behalf of my co-counsel, John Carpenter and Zuckerman, I would like to read a statement by Helena's mother, and then we have a video of her mother, whose name is Olga Solovey, and she will be speaking in Ukrainian, Russian, but we have English subtitles for Olga's statement. After that, I would like to read a very brief statement by the sister of Helena, Svetlana Zemko, who will also speak Ukrainian, Russian, but we have English subtitles for her video. And finally, I would appreciate the indulgence of the court to read a short statement of Helena's father. We have no video for him due to his health. His name is Anatoly Androsevich. And then I will conclude. I have some photos as well of the parents and sister with Helena. So thank you very much for your courtesy in this matter. This is a statement of Olga Solovey, Helena Hutchins' mother. Good afternoon. My name is Olga, and I am the mother of Helena. It is extremely difficult for me to speak about this. Helena was the best daughter on this earth. I remember how she graduated with the most excellent marks from 2 universities here in Ukraine. Even so, she left for the USA to study and pursue her dreams. She had a beautiful family, her son Andros. She loved him madly and endlessly. All of her friends absolutely adored her. After this tragedy, my life has been split into 2, before and after. Time does not heal. It simply prolongs my pain and suffering. I have hope that the guilty, those that are responsible for the death of my daughter, will be punished fairly and sentenced justly. Justice must prevail. And I would like to say also that Olga and Svetlana made these videos despite the fact that where they live in Ukraine, in Kyiv, they are being bombed every single day. This is the video of Olga.
Хачинськ, мене звуть Ольга. Сьогодні я хотіла б вам розказати про свою доньку, яка була дуже талановита, гарна, дуже гарно вчилась, дуже добре до нас ставилась. Я пам'ятаю той день, коли її не стало. Мені дуже тяжко. Дуже тяжко без неї.
Shame.
Я не можу. Ой. Так. В університеті, потім вона родила гарного хлопчика, мого внука, з яким я зараз не маю можливості бачити. Вона була дуже гарною матір'ю, але більше всього вона працювати любила. Перевернула все моє життя. Дуже тяжко дивитися, як дитина росте без матері. Я хотіла б ще сказати, що вона вчилася в школі дуже гарно, невідмінно. Вже закінчила всі вузи, в яких вона навчалася. Я від усіх чула тільки гарні слова. І сьогодні мені не проходиться біль втрати. Пила до них кожен рік. Я бачила, як Андрус підростає, як він на неї дуже схожий. Оля дуже нас всіх любила. Вона завжди говорила: мама, я хочу, щоб ви жили краще. Весь час вона мене прилишала до себе. Вона хотіла, щоб я була поруч. Але оскільки ще Світлана була не зовсім дорослою, я не могла поїхати. Я їй обіцяла, що коли Свята буде замужем, коли в неї буде чоловік, я приїду обов'язково. Але я не встигла. У Галі дуже було багато друзів, які завжди приходили до нас, з якими вона старалась підтримувати контакти. Вона всім дзвонила. Ми з нею созванювались кожну неділю. У нас був день, це субота або неділя, ми завжди спілкувались годинами. Кращого друга, ніж Галя, в мене не було. Могла поділитися зі мною усім. У неї дуже гарна сім'я була. Але цей день перевернув все життя.
Sorry, guys, about the subtitles.
Мені дуже важко без неї. Я весь час чекаю, коли я з нею зустрінусь. Але я дала собі слово, що я обов'язково побачу, що виросте, коли він буде навчатися, коли він жениться, коли в нього буде своя сім'я. І я повинна триматися. Ой, я не можу. Коли Галя загинула, було 3 години ночі у нас. Я не могла заснути, я до 3 ночі не спала, мені було дуже тривожно. А в 3 часа я побачила, що дзвонить мед. Я дуже перелякалась, значить, щось случилось. Бо вночі він ніколи мені не дзвонив. І він не міг довго сказати, що сталося. Він тільки сказав: мама, у нас біда. І хвилин 5 він не міг сказати. Я кажу: да говори вже, що сталося? Каже: Галі немає. Після того я не пам'ятаю нічого. Я була одна вдома. Я кричала. Я йому ще говорю: може ще не ясно, може ще все буде добре. Але він мені сказав, що її немає. Дуже важко втрачати дітей. За словами не передати.
Time does not heal.
І час не допомагає. Пройшло 2,5 роки. А мені стає ще гірше. Якщо перший рік я ще думала, ждала, що вона приїде. А цей рік я себе настраювала, пробувала змиритися з тим, що сталося. Але, напевно, я слабка. Хоча Галя казала, що де мама сильна. Ну, в мене не виходить. Я хочу сказати, що мені легше не стане від того, що хоч засудять. На скільки років, це не має значення. Але я хочу, щоб була справедливість, що хтось винуватий, хай понесе покарання за свій злочин. Мені дуже хотілося, щоб до мене хтось підійшов, мені поспівчував, вибачився, подивився просто в очі, мені хотілося подивитися тим людям. Може, мені було б легше. Але ніхто не підійшов. Я була на похоронах. Я їздила в минулому році, в жовтні місяці. Але я, крім Галіних друзів, нікого не бачила. І боляче. Люди, які винуваті, вони навіть не підійшли до матері. Я не можу зрозуміти. Всі люди, які прийшли...
So Hannah never contacted Alina's family.
Ніхто до мене не підходив, ніхто не вибачався, ніхто не співчував. Вона дуже багато працювала. На її весь час був розписаний. Але більше всього в житті вона любила свого сина. Я не знаю, у них настільки були відносини, розумієте? Вона просто не могла надихатися їм. Вона дзвонила йому кожен день, вона розказувала йому казки, вона все йому розповідала про роботу, говорила на добраніч, і він відпочивав. І це було кожен день. Не було такого дня, щоб вона не дзвонила йому, коли була відрядження.
So just to note that you can imagine Alina was incentivized. She was working not just for herself, but also for her mother. She was trying to get her mother out of Ukraine, which is like a war zone. And so it's not just a loss of her life, but her mother in a way has lost her kind of escape route, I guess, or her support from, from America, from someone, from her daughter in America.
Завжди посміхалась, була весела, щаслива така. І дуже тішилась тим, що в неї все виходить, що в неї все складається так, як вона хотіла. Я думаю, що вона була щаслива. В сімейних відносинах в них все було добре. Вона ще дуже хотіла дівчинку. Перший місяць я була там цілий місяць. Коли ми приїхали, я попросила, вони могли кремірувати її не в Мехіко, але я попросила, я хотіла попрощатися. Привезли в Лос-Анджелес. Ми попрощалися, а прах ми забирали через 2 неділі. І тоді похоронили її на кладбище Голлівуд навсегда називається. В центрі міста. Дуже в красивому місці, там, де проходять фільми всі нові, різні. Там велика сцена, там збирається дуже багато людей, і там показують нові фільми, які виходять. І вона рядом з сценою похована. Канал красивий, там лебеді плавають, дуже місце гарне.
I'd just like to add, Your Honor, that Olga is one of the most courageous women I have ever met, in addition to living in the war zone and suffering the tragedy of her daughter. She is a nurse who cares for those who have been wounded in the war. Next is Svetlana Zemko, Helena's sister. And Svetlana says this. As I gathered my thoughts to write this statement, I wanted to start by emphasizing an important memory. When my mother and I were building our homes in Kyiv, one of the most fundamental things we were dreaming of was how our entire family would gather together comfortably at this home with Helena. As it stands now, that will never happen again. I very much wanted for Helena to meet my children and my husband. Helena will never meet my baby boy who was born after her death. Her death has shattered my heart. She was not simply my sister. She was my friend, and in a certain sense, my second mother. The video, of Svetlana.
So I think we're going to get a sense of Alina through this video, through her sister.
Я молодша сестра, вона старша на 7 років. То вона мені була в якомусь сенсі матусею навіть, бо приймала участь у моєму вихованні. У нас було дуже багато і таких теплих, смішних історій. І коли я була зовсім маленька, то у нас був такий, не знаю, як це сказати, змагання, хто кого передражнить. Але згодом, коли ми стали дорослішими, то у нас ці стосунки із виховання з її боку перетекли більш такі дружні. І ці межі вікові, вони стерилися. І ми почали там тусуватися разом, десь їздити на шопінг, знайомитися, проводити час по-інакшому. Як я тоді так кайфувала, думала, вау, я така доросла. Вона мене брала десь із собою, ми цікаво проводили час. Навіть просто поїхати на прогулянку, вона мені давала свій одяг, у неї був завжди дуже модний одяг, вона мала гарний смак, і для мене було це так тепло, що вона зі мною ділилася. І може цю якість мені таку не жмота, можна так виразитися. Це може і від неї трохи пішло, бо вона така ніколи не прижимала навіть шоколад, коли у нас був. Вона ділила все порівно. Вона не брала собі ніколи більше. Це як по-братськи, по-братимськи, чи як кажуть. Я всім ходила, потякала, кажу, моя сестра, в мене найкрутіша. Я ще жартувала, кажу, що у нас я такий ледаща, а сестра працює за 2 з нас. Вона дуже багато працювала, щоб дістатися своєї місії.
She's really working so hard to get her dream
Моя сестра
accomplished.
була крута. Це був мій друг. Це було моє натхнення в якомусь сенсі, бо коли мені ставало якось зле, я завжди думала, ось у тебе сестра така крута. Їй завжди було пофіг на усі проблеми, вона йшла вперед завжди. Тобто ця цілеспрямованість, вона завжди так надихала. І мені здається, не тільки мене, бо вона така взагалі була світла людина. І я навіть не можу сказати жодної поганої або мінусової характеристики дати їй, ніяк, чесно. Не тому, що вона моя сестра, а просто вона така людина. Вона була дуже крута. Сестра в мене була для мене прикладом. Багато в чому, до речі.
She gave me more than my mom did in some
І
respects.
у плані виховання, мені здається, що вона навіть більше мені дала, аніж мама. Не знаю. Мені дуже важко про це казати, бо то була моя така велика мрія, щоб ми збиралися з дітками усією нашою родиною і святкували Різдво, або там хоча б, я не кажу дуже часто, 1-2 рази на рік. То була така моя мрія, щоб дітки разом гралися, щоб вогонь горів, і всі так за столом, і ми разом. І щоб це було так тепло. Я розумію, що цього вже ніколи не буде. Блін, не можу. Мені треба, я не знаю, втекти. Фух. Короче, как-то я не хотела реветь. Просто одно дело, когда ты говоришь, какая она классная, другое дело, когда ты понимаешь, и все. Я взагалі намагалася триматися якомога міцніше, коли це трапилося, бо я розуміла, що якщо я ще буду плакати, то мама взагалі здуріє. Я просто бажаю, щоб це ця ситуація не лишалася просто так у повітрі, як випадок, бо люди мають нести відповідальність за свої вчинки. І кожен, хто винен, я вважаю, що винна не тільки одна людина тут, бо ми там не були, звісно, але як будуть докази, як по цій справі, то кожного, кого вдасться притягти до відповідальності, мають нести цю відповідальність. Бо це не тільки життя однієї людини, це ще здоров'я всієї родини і ментальне здоров'я мого племінника.
Carrie Morrissey looks like she's on her phone.
And this is the statement of Anatoly Androsevich, father of Helena Hutchins. The demise of my daughter, Helena, on the 21st of October, 2021, became the tragedy and biggest bitter loss of my life, as well as the lives of my close loved ones. There is no way I can put into words to express the soul-crushing pain and suffering that I live through every day. The constant state of stress, the turmoil of my soul, have drained my physical strength and caused an abrupt decline of my health with continued physical pain in my heart. Every day I remember Helena. I remember the moments of our lives. Since she was a child, my Helena was a very curious and adventurous, hardworking, friendly, and caring person. At 11 years old, Helena convinced me to show her the nuclear submarine. We walked through each part of the nuclear submarine. As she grew up, it was her dream to make a documentary film about nuclear submarines, with an emphasis on the threat of nuclear weapons for humanity. My Helena had a devoted and loving husband, Matthew, a wonderful son, Andros, and a profession she loved. In the most developed and democratic country, the USA. I could not have ever fathomed that her life would be endangered while she was at work. As a former Marine officer, I fully understand the responsible and correct way to handle firearms. I am confidently stating that the death of my daughter was caused by systematic, gross violations of safety rules and regulations during filming of the movie Rust.
Systematic, not just one person.
I do not wish for revenge, but believe that each person responsible for the death of my Helena needs to carry the punishment that is equal to their guilt. Maybe, just maybe, this might prevent the same type of tragedies in the future to others and spare other parents from such a heart-wrenching catastrophe. And now I would like to show the court very quickly just some photos. This, Your Honor, is a photo of Olga and Helena and Andros.
Are you going to bring it up to me, or did you want to put it on the?
It's up to you. Oh, can you? Can you show it?
Elmo.
Thank you. Thank you. The next photo is a photo of Svetlana and Helena. And the last photo, Your Honor, is Anatoly and his grandson, Andros. Thank you. And as was mentioned, this week, April 9th, would have been Helena's 45th birthday. In honor of her birthday, our law firms have placed flowers on her grave at Hollywood Forever. May she rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gloria Allred, basically representing Alina's
Your Honor, we just
family,
have a
her
brief,
father, mother, and
5-minute
sister.
slideshow, and that will conclude the state's presentation.
You notice Matt didn't say anything. Alina's husband.
It did.
Wait a minute. Come here. Why won't this go into...
The person closest to her, arguably, isn't saying anything in the trial about her death. I don't know. To me, that's a bit of a betrayal. Does make one wonder, if this was you, if you had been killed, what would people say about you? Who would come forward? Who wouldn't? How many people would come forward?
Okay, we're going to have to do this a different way. Why don't we... Let me see what the best way is to handle this and like that.
Kerry Morris is also prosecuting Alec Baldwin. That case will be heard in July. I'm going to be in America in a couple of weeks, and I was thinking, could I extend my stay till July? Sorry, that's just too long. This is going to be too expensive. But I wouldn't have minded. I wouldn't have minded attending that trial. I don't know whether there's going to be a plea deal between now and then. I doubt it. But that's certainly what Court TV predicted, which is why I think they didn't cover it. I think they thought this case would just go away in various plea deals. Never happened. I find a lot of people in the true crime community basically passed on this case. I think I'm one of the few channels that covered this from the beginning, recognizing the legal aspect, recognizing what had happened, recognizing that it's not, even if someone isn't intentionally killed, a crime may still have happened, and an unacceptable criminal offense may have happened that may apply to more than one person. Can I ask a really stupid question? I just can't for the life of me remember Hannah's lawyer's name. What's this guy's name again? I can't remember his name.
How about we put it right here so you can see it? And I think that will work for that camera. And don't forget when you get your cue, okay?
I think that ship has sailed. He was actually offered a plea deal, and I'm really glad that it was rescinded.
Arrow key.
Vowels, that's right. Vowels.
Okay.
Thanks for that. Okay.
Let's see how we've got it.
Instead of playing it on the projector, the camera is gonna. Dreamy-eyed and dreaming of a future, a better life. I'm not going to play the music because I'll no doubt get a copyright strike. So let's just look at the pictures. Look at her standing on the side of that chair to get that angle. Early days in the movie industry. I think that's Sergei Svetnoy beside her. I think he was also part of the Rust set. That's kind of how we knew her in the last couple of years. Attractive lady, talented, hardworking. Kind, right? She's obviously come a long way from Ukraine. She'd come a long way to kind of build her life, and was barely 40 years old when she lost it. I think that's her with her mother. Obviously, quite a lot of effort has gone into simply remembering her, paying tribute to her. Not sure why we're not seeing those images now. But in a way, none of this is surprising. She was a cinematographer, and so it's quite an unusual sentencing hearing in that it's so colorful, creative, also audio-visual. And although it might seem a bit over the top, I do think criminal trials are lacking in this sort of thing. We do have body cam videos these days. There could be far more use of cameras and this sort of thing. And you even have situations now in the 21st century where the technical problems is like, jeepers, you should just be able to, the court needs to resume and the court needs to do its thing. And you shouldn't have technical problems with sound or audio or anything like that. That should have been sorted out 10 years ago, 20 years ago. To be having these sorts of problems today is really it's kind of like non-negotiable. And it's in this way that I think a lot of courtrooms need to update themselves. Courtrooms today are often part of the media narrative, and make sure that you are making yourself effectively understood. Is this still going on?
Thank you.
Mr. Bowles?
Your Honor, thank you. Your Honor, Ms. Gutierrez Reed has a statement she'd like to.
Oh, so Hannah's going to say something on her own behalf. This should be interesting.
First and foremost, my heart aches for the Hutchins family and friends and colleagues as well. And it has since the day this tragedy occurred. Helena has been and always will be an inspiration to me. I understand she was taken too soon, and I pray that you all find peace. I am beyond grateful that Joel survived that terrible day. My heart goes out to the film industry for the devastating pain that this tragedy caused and the old wounds that have been reopened. I am saddened by the way the media sensationalized our traumatic tragedy and portrayed me as a complete monster, which has actually been the total opposite of what's been in my heart. Your Honor, when I took on Rust, I was young and I was naive, but I took my job as seriously as I knew how to. Despite not having proper time, resources, and staffing, when things got tough, I just did my best to handle it. Today, I humbly ask you to consider probation, a probation where I can contribute to society through community service, and I can continue my counseling, and I welcome any classes that you may deem necessary for me to attend. I give you my word now that I would strictly follow the rules and respect the parameters of that probation. I beg you, please don't give me more time. The jury has found me in part at fault for this god-awful tragedy, but that doesn't make me a monster. That makes me human. Thank you.
So just a little bit of a comment, might sound quite mean, but if Hannah did show remorse, I think you would see tears coming down her cheeks. And I haven't seen one tear from Hannah. It's one thing to express remorse, to communicate remorse. It's another thing to actually feel remorse and for that remorse to actually be genuine. I don't really get a sense that there's any remorse here, which is quite astonishing. I must say, while I've been watching this, I've actually shed a couple of tears, and I'm not really directly attached to any of this. So I do find it, I'm pretty shocked at what I perceive to be quite a heartless defendant. After all of this, you can raise the pitch of your voice and you might sound like there's some contrition, but I certainly don't see any. I certainly don't see any.
Thank you. Your Honor, and I believe Bill Reed would like to speak to the court this time.
Well, Hannah's dad is going to speak to the court now as well. See what he says.
Thank you, Your Honor. Brief statement. It's a horrible tragedy for that wonderful lady, Helena, to lose her life. Also be a tragedy to put my daughter Hannah in the penitentiary for that. It's alleged she introduced live ammunition on the set. That's not true. why would she? The two people responsible for whatever come on the set are the vendor and the property master who had to work for her. On that terrible day, they had Hannah off the set doing prop duties, and she asked him to please bring her back on when Mr. Bowman comes so he could do a final check on the gun and its instructions. They did not do that. If they had it, this horrible day would not happen. Thank you, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the court.
Thank you.
So, what kind of example is Stel Reed where he's basically also blaming other people? She's been convicted, right? But he just ignores that and blames other people. And anyway, let's continue. I also thought that was basically lame.
Thank you, Your Honor. And just briefly, Judge, I've made most of my arguments in the written pleadings. And Judge, it's nobody in this courtroom could not be moved by what we just saw. The family, Helena's family, her friends, it was a horrible tragedy. There's no doubt about that. And it's a tragedy for everybody. There were a number of lives changed, lost. That day, her friends talked about that, and that includes Ms. Gutierrez. I just want the court to know primarily that she has felt remorse, and maybe I've talked to her as much as anybody, at least on the legal side. She's broken down. She's had mental breakdowns. She said, if only, many, many, many times, and it hasn't come out. It hasn't come out until today because of the legal proceedings and the system we have. But she has truly felt remorse, and I will tell the court that. As an officer of the court, that she has indicated that to me. This court has seen jail calls she's made. I would submit to this court that you could probably survey 100 people after something like this happens, including everybody that participated in the trial, scrutinize all of our calls, and pick out something bad that one of us said. Because, Your Honor, none of us are what we are on our best day, nor are we what we are on our worst day. And as Ms. Gutierrez said, she's human. She's flawed just like everybody else in this courtroom. We, as court, to consider fairness in respect that this was a cascade of tragedy. As some of the speakers indicated, there were multiple system failures by multiple people. Some of those people have come before the court, as this court knows, and received 6-month misdemeanor probation.
That's true.
Some have not been punished. Some have yet to come before the court. At least one individual is going to be tried in July. And so I know
Hannah
the
could have
court
also
has the
taken a plea deal.
responsibility
She
to
didn't.
weigh all of
She
that and to determine
insisted
what
that
is
she was innocent.
commensurate and fair, as one speaker said, for Ms. Gutierrez. And what does that mean in the scope of things, and what has come before this court?
Someone's
And I'm
got to
asking
take
the court to
responsibility
consider
for
that.
this.
And also what probation might do for her in terms of rehabilitation, which is another goal of our system here.
And
Anything else?
Bowles is done.
No, you're right.
This is it,
All
I
right, so
think.
I've made some notes along the way, so if I refer to the notes and I'm not looking at tables, it's because I'm reading. First of all, thank you for your presentations. Thank the friends and family of Helena for presenting their memories and their losses of Helena. There are really 3 choices for sentencing before me. What the defense wants is a conditional discharge. This means straight probation, unless Ms. Gutierrez comes back on a probation violation. She won't have a felony conviction on her record, so she can continue to possess firearms. Again, unless she comes back on a probation violation and receives the imposition of the probated sentence. The second one has not been offered by counsel, but I've certainly thought of it, and it's to continue her in the Santa Fe County Detention Center. That would be for 12 months. That's all she's allowed to stay at the detention center. And then put her on probation for the rest of the time. She's facing 18 months. She's got pre-sentence confinement for about a month or so.
Maximum she can get is 18 months.
In this scenario, she won't experience prison. She will be a convicted felon. She cannot carry a firearm under federal law and for a specific time under New Mexico law. And then there's prison. And the state has proposed at 85% of the time sentenced to incarceration based on the serious violent offense statute. For all the fanfare and pundits and finger pointing that has been going on for over 2 years, we were able to seat a jury of her peers who confirmed they could listen to the evidence received in court and determine the facts and apply the law. They found Ms. Gutierrez guilty of involuntary manslaughter. What were some of the poignant facts that came out during the trial? In her police interview, she proudly owned her position as armorer. On October 21st, 2021, chaos ended after the film crew walked off. Ms. Hutchins and others were trying to rig, if you will, how they were going to keep filming. And what was the defendant doing while waiting? She was loading Alec Baldwin's gun. Did she have enough time to load the weapon safely? Plenty. Did she load the weapon? Yes. With dummies in a live round. Did she check what she was loading? No.
Simple.
Why? Well, in her own words, most recently in her jail calls, she didn't need to be shaking the dummies all the time. Did she check after that? No. And while you've heard her concerns about how she'll never work again as an armorer leading up to the trial, have her concerns changed? No. Here's what she says. This whole thing has been a character attack on her. Just recently in her allocution, I'm not a monster. And what did, where is it? They talk about how much of on the phone, she and another are talking about how much of Hannah's life that they could take up and that this is messing up her modeling career. This is while she's incarcerated waiting for a sentence. And what does she say about the death of Helena? Hannah is dismissive of the judge talking about someone dying as a result of her actions. Hannah says she's looking at 13 months, which is ridiculous over what happened. Hannah says that people have accidents and people die. It's an unfortunate part of life, but it doesn't mean she should be in jail.
It's freaking infuriating.
Discharge is not appropriate. And the second option of leaving you in the detention center would be giving you a pass you do not deserve. I did not hear you take accountability in your allocution. You said you were sorry. You were sorry, but not you were
Just
sorry for what you
words.
did. You were sorry for it and hope they can find peace. It was your attorney that had to tell the court that you were remorseful. The word remorse, a deep regret coming from a sense of guilt for past wrongs. That's not you.
You don't feel any guilt.
You're hereby sentenced as follows. Stand.
Stand.
I'm sentencing you to 18 months of incarceration at a New Mexico Women's Correctional Facility. I find that what you did constitutes a serious violent offense. It was committed in a physically violent manner, a fatal gunshot, done with your recklessness in the face of knowledge that your acts were reasonably likely to result in serious harm. You were the armorer, the one that stood between a safe weapon and a weapon that could kill someone. You alone turned a safe weapon into a lethal weapon. But for you, Ms. Hutchins would be alive, a husband would have his partner, and a little boy would have his mother. Please take her.
That was very well stated by the judge.
I'm going to ask the deputies to watch how the courtroom gets cleared.
Hannah's just been given the maximum sentence, which I totally applaud. I mean, it's a sentence of 1.5 years, and you want to quibble about, I want to go on probation.
We are in recess.
1.5 years is never going to pay for the death of Helena Hutchins, but it's the minimum. It's really the minimum. I mean, it's the maximum, but it's the minimum that Hannah can really pay. Again, I've got to say I applaud the judge in basically recognizing what remorse is and that there was no remorse here. And that is something that I find devastating, that you can have the mother crying, you can have all of this information shown, and Hannah can just sit there and it's just like water off a duck's back. It's incredible. It's incredible, like, how do people get into this place where they have they do not give a shit about other people. They cannot give a shit about other people. Someone else is to blame. I shouldn't be punished. I shouldn't be held accountable. How do you get into a place where you are that selfish? I honestly just don't understand it. I don't know whether it's to do with drugs. If you're going to say it's drugs, well, in this case, drugs were never proved, right? So that part of the narrative is just gone out of the whole thing. I think the simple explanation is, that if you are addicted to something that you can't give a shit about anyone else, because all your shits are about getting your next hit and how you feel. But anyway, that narrative was totally excised out of the thing. And Hannah was actually found innocent, or put it this way, she wasn't found guilty on the charge of, what is it? Tampering with evidence. And the tampering with evidence charge had to do with, did she hand over a baggie, right? But one must say it is incredible how after all of this, you just don't see any remorse. There's no, it's literally what Agent Tammy Lee said to Chris Watts, I've not seen one tear. There literally wasn't a single tear from Hannah in this entire trial. And, if you think about it even further, her attorney says that she has showed remorse. I don't know. Is that true, or did she just not show remorse in a crowded room? I think one's also got to look at, the fact that the whole Rust production was fined by the safety board, the maximum. I actually want to mention that. The safety board fined the production the maximum fine that they could fine. Hannah's now just been given the maximum sentence that she could be given, and I think that's absolutely justified. Without being mean, that was what she deserved. And now there's one more person that faces trial, Alec Baldwin. Is he going to get? Is he going to score some legal points? Is he going to be more charismatic to the jury? If you think about it, if I was a defense lawyer, I would say to my client, no matter what happens in this case, you need to show remorse, right? It's good for you. If you show remorse, then you're going to get a lesser sentence. And so even with that in mind, I don't think Hannah was able to muster the remorse necessary. I think she was acting in court today. I don't think she was able to muster the remorse necessary. And I think that comes from a lifetime of not really caring about other people, not knowing how to think about other people, not knowing how to feel about other people, just thinking about yourself. I was also really disappointed at Thel Reed basically taking the opportunity to blame other people like Sarah Zachary, and also basically feeling like he could, I don't know, I just didn't like what he said. I felt like, so that's where Hannah gets her sort of exceptionalism from. I just didn't like it. So have a look at some of your comments. So bear in mind, when Alec Baldwin is in court, and presumably this is going to happen, he will be far more charismatic than Hannah. He will be able to tug on heartstrings and, influence people. The question is a jury going to be swayed by that? Should they be swayed by that? Will they be swayed by that? It's hard to imagine people won't be, because he's such an influential person, and also such a I won't say talented actor, but he certainly able to, I suppose, yeah, he is a talented actor. So I think he will be able, he might even be able to cry in court. If anything, Baldwin may have looked at this and said, well, if I can just shed a couple of tears, I might get 6 months off or whatever, right? That could happen. Another really good example of remorse is Oscar Pistorius. If you follow that case, he cried in like floods of there were like outbursts where they had to shut the whole court down so that he could recover. And yet also with Oscar, I didn't remember seeing tears. I was in the court when Oscar was on trial. I don't remember seeing tears. You hear the crying, you hear the sobbing, you hear the snorting, you hear him vomiting into a bucket. People said afterwards, when you looked in that bucket, there was nothing there. And so is that remorse real? And it's just incredible that if you say to a criminal, if you can show remorse, then you're going to get maybe 5 years off your sentence, and they're actually incapable of showing it. And isn't that why the crime was committed in the first place? Because this person doesn't have the capacity to think of another person as a human being, doesn't have the capacity to feel the life force of another human being. It's really of concern, because how many people are out there that are like this, that are just incredibly selfish, and when they do something wrong, when they're convicted, probably right now Hannah is thinking, maybe I can just appeal this, or maybe my lawyer can get me off. At what point do you ever accept responsibility? Or is the answer that you never ever do? You never ever accept responsibility. And this is, I think, the difference, I think, between my channel and a lot of other channels out there. I want to know where this comes from. I want to find the sickness, the source of the sickness in society, and say, that's where it comes from. Maybe we have it in ourselves. Let's sort it out, right? Whereas a lot of other channels are just giving you the superficial treatment, where they're saying, oh, that was a lie, and we saw evidence. Then it's all a very superficial level. But what is the source of this soul sickness? What is the source of it? Is it narcissism? And I think that's part of it. Is it a kind of psychopathy of our age? I'm not saying that there's been psychopathy since the world began. You could say cats are psychopaths. But to me, it does address this question of our common humanity. Who are we as human beings if we're not capable of feeling remorse about something? Do you know you can feel remorse about something even if it's not your fault? Even if you didn't do something wrong, you can feel really bad about it. And what I've sensed so much from one perpetrator to the next, they sort of feel like, they seem to think, if I show remorse, I'm showing I'm guilty, so at all costs I mustn't show any remorse. But of course, in the sentencing, and that may be true, you might say there is a little bit of a legal argument to that. But at the sentencing, a lawyer can definitely say to his client, obviously, if there's the chance of an appeal is not there. If you show remorse, especially if you can just feel that remorse, you may be able to cut off half your sentence. So, what Hannah said right at the end, she said, well, the media said I'm a monster, it's so unfair. The judge actually picked up on that. And she picked up on how much did she really respond to what is going on in court today. So there's a little bit of leeway for the judge to fine-tune what she thinks, what she feels. Not much, but there is some. So have a look at some of your points. Humans are either fancy apes or downgraded angels. And, one can't help feeling just bad about the whole thing, that this was one big mess that has been covered up with words and with nonsense. And this wonderful person, one of the, perhaps the most shining light on that entire set was the one who was the victim of this. Seems so unfair, doesn't it? I've got a couple of pictures to share of Helena. I think it's this one. These are just some images that I selected. And then what I think is amazing about her is she comes across as American. She also comes across as someone from somewhere else that worked very hard to make something of her life, right? I'm going to put it a bit bigger. She came from somewhere else and dreamed a dream and made something of herself, and it was snatched away. It was stolen from her. It's another picture of her. She'd just become a mother. She was in her early 40s. She was just coming into her own when that was taken from her. And the next phase of this whole thing is going to be Alec Baldwin. What is he going to say? What is his role in this? How much agency does he? We asked the same question in Laurie Vallow and Chad Bell. If you've got two defendants, who had the most agency? Doesn't mean if you had no agency, you had no responsibility. But if you had more agency, do you have more responsibility? So that is the kind of the next question. A beautiful woman as well. She's a cinematographer, but she's also just seems to be a beautiful woman and a beautiful person. Not just beautiful, but talented, hardworking, kind, considerate. We know on the day that I don't know if you guys know this, when the crew walked out, or prior to the crew walking out, Alina sort of suggested not using a crane, foregoing the use of a crane, and that money then being used to pay for the accommodation of the camera crew, who just felt it was a really long way to drive back and forth every day. So, she was a self-sacrificing person. That kind of thing where you do something that's sort of to your own detriment, where you sacrifice, is a little bit like what it means to feel remorse. It's where you appreciate how somebody else feels, where you sort of can reach out with your heart and your mind and your feelings to appreciate someone else's situation, right? There is someone, and this is what is so sad about this case. This is someone who was doing that, and right, and she loses her life because of someone else who can't do that. I don't know. I just find it so unfair, that someone like Hannah, unaccomplished, entitled, arrogant, unsympathetic, takes someone like this out of the world, indirectly, but nevertheless, who is all those things: kind, considerate, generous, loving, all of those things. Talented. Is Hannah Guitterrez Reid a talented armorer? Is Hannah Guitterrez Reid a kind person? Just in general, is she kind? Is she looking after other family members, or are they looking after her? I don't know. It's just so. It definitely is sad. Definitely is sad. There has been some. I think there was some acting in the courtroom from Hannah today, and what can we expect from the lead actor when he's on trial in July? What can we expect? What do you think? Anyway, that is it from me. I really did want to cover the sentencing. I was quite shocked that it was on the same day. I was going to have to choose between Chair Daybell, but really was no contest. Thanks a lot to you guys for joining me here. I don't know if you noticed, I was quite emotional myself. But grief does edify us, to the extent that we can truly mourn. And I mean, this is someone I don't even know. It edifies us to the extent that you can show sadness and even remorse for somebody else, in a sense, or on behalf of someone else. It shows that we are human beings and that we're good people, So I do want to cover the Baldwin trial. I will continue to do analysis on the Rust incident. I think I've already got over 100 episodes covering this case. As I say, I have been to the Bonanza Creek, the Gates, and Santa Fe, and drove basically from Albuquerque to Santa Fe. So I know how far it is. I'm going to be in America in a week. I missed being, if I had been in America 2 weeks earlier, I would have probably sat in that courtroom today. But anyway, it is what it is. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm not going to continue coverage of the rest of the Chair Daybell trial for today. I'm going to be commencing with the Karen Reed trial. Until that starts, I will continue with Chair Daybell. I will also continue with Chair Daybell as and when it's required. I've got quite a lot going on. As I say, I'm going to America in 2 weeks, and I've also got some stuff to get done. So, that's it from me. Just going through a couple of your comments. Stephanie says, thank you for being here. By the way, I did kick someone off chat. I just thought every comment he made was so inappropriate. It was so also just blaming people and whatever. And it was like, are you not listening to what's actually going on? So I don't know if the mods noticed. I just kicked him off chat. He didn't necessarily break a particular rule, but I just thought it was totally inappropriate. Stephanie says, I did too. Okay. Let's just go through a couple of quick comments. Pauline says, as a cameraman, this case would make a difference to you. Yeah, I mean, I'm a sort of I see myself as a creative photographer. I've always wanted to actually make movies. If I didn't become what I am, I mean, I write stories. I've written fiction as well. I would have become a filmmaker. I still would like to be honest. Lynn Lippy says, this whole case feels like the vacuous LA vibe of superficiality. I disagree a little bit with that, because there were some people who I definitely was touched by what they said. I was a little disappointed by the director's testimony in court, and I was also disappointed by what he said here. Saying something like, I wish you were still alive, to me is very, it's obvious. What can you say beyond that? Laura says, I can't say my true thoughts of Alec Baldwin's off-screen behavior, and so on. Liesel says, it is the emphatic and compassion you show for victims that makes us unite around you, Nick. Your keen insight is a bonus. Well, you're going to make me cry. I don't really cry very often, but I must say it's certainly my compassion for Reva Steenkamp that started me on this whole true crime journey. I kept saying, what was her story? And there was a very big overlap to this story as well, where you had Helena's life and Helena's death totally overshadowed by Alec Baldwin basically saying everything that he thought, and he said, I thought, did she faint? And all of that minimizing. And what we've seen is, despite all of that minimizing, thanks again, Liesel, despite all of that minimizing, the authorities correctly gave this production a maximum fine. This court has correctly given Hannah the maximum sentence, only 18 months. And now now the last kind of box to tick, is that box going to be ticked with Alec Baldwin? Is a jury going to be swayed? Is he going to say something that's going to perhaps change what we know, change what we understand? Is he going to take accountability? I wouldn't bet on it. I definitely wouldn't bet on it. I also want to say that when I first heard about this case, I gave everyone the benefit of the doubt. I thought, oh, it's a mistake. But then I paid attention to it, and I listened to Alec Baldwin's statements on December 3rd, and I started thinking critically about it. I was listening to it, and I thought, hang on, what has happened here is actually extremely serious. And that understanding from this channel has been borne out by the verdicts that we've seen from this judge, this court, but also from the Health and Safety Board. So what I'm trying to say is I appreciated the seriousness of what had happened here when a lot of other people didn't. Even Court TV recently was saying they thought it would all kind of be sorted out. Well, things don't get sorted out when people don't take accountability. And what you've seen here is a real resistance to saying, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I made a mistake. You haven't seen that. And you know, it's that same thing applies in other things, in other areas. When you make a mistake, do you admit it? Do you show remorse? When I make a mistake, do I admit it? Do I show remorse? It's a question we can all ask of ourselves, right? Or do you need to be taken kicking and screaming to a point where someone says you were wrong and has got to prove it, and then you still don't accept it? So I don't know. I just sort of feel it's this whole case. We put Baldwin back on screen. This whole case is basically, in a way, holds a mirror to ourselves and says, are you a human being? Can you say sorry for doing something terrible? Even if it was an accident, can you say you're sorry? Can you be sorry? Can you feel sorry? Are you sorry? Or is it left to everyone else to pick up the pieces? Karen, the sentence was 18 months, which is the maximum. It's basically a year and a half. Okay. Thanks a lot, Robbie Robin. Thank you. Pauline says, we can't blame all of the film industry. It was this particular set. Yeah, it's certainly not the whole film industry, and it's not like the whole of California or LA or superficial. But there are areas that need improvement. I did see on Court TV that there were two big actors that looked like they were going to testify for Alec Baldwin. I was quite surprised to see them. I think it was Helen Mirren and what's his name? Harrison Ford. I was quite surprised to see that. Whether that's still going to happen, I don't know. But that's something I saw on Court TV. Andar says, I messed up just this morning and had to apologize to my wife. Apologies matter, and so do learning and changing the behavior. You know what? If you think about it, you know how the whole thing with human behavior and human psychology works is if you say sorry, that's like just part of being polite and greasing the wheels of human dynamics, saying sorry. But being sorry means that you can actually learn the lesson and be a nicer human being. Like being sorry, saying sorry, being sorry and feeling sorry, that helps you to, in terms of another person, be a nicer person to be around. So why wouldn't you want to do that? Just to be right, just to be, I'm right, you wrong, or I'm not wrong, or I didn't make a mistake, someone else did, or someone else is more to blame. But, to the extent that you can blame yourself, you can do something about your life and your world and everything that's going on. Just think about it. To the extent that you blame yourself for certain things, but I mean appropriate blame. Don't blame yourself for everything, and don't blame yourself for nothing. But blame yourself appropriately for certain things, and then you can take accountability for it, and then you can change. You can, if you blame yourself for, let's say, being overweight, you don't blame the food industry, and maybe the food industry is at fault. You don't blame someone else for giving you a chocolate cake. You blame yourself. You can then say, I'm to blame. Well, then I've also got the solution. As soon as someone else is to blame, the solution is outside of yourself. So there's a wonderful opportunity in taking blame and feeling remorse. Part of that thing where you feel remorse is you feel the loss of life. And it's not a nice feeling. It's often excruciating. You may feel remorse for your own life that you've lost, where you actually that's stated in the wrong way. You may feel guilt or regret for your own life that has been lost through whatever, not thinking critically, wasting your time, being deluded, being angry, blaming other people. As soon as you feel that grief, that's the beginning of healing, and that's the beginning of where you can start going down the road that you need to go down, and go down it in an effective way, right? Absolutely. Okay, I need to sign off here. Speech finished. You can see I've definitely been moved by this hearing. Definitely have been kind of triggered by it. Yeah, catch yourself before you hurt someone else. If you're driving in a car, for example, how tired am I? Blame yourself. Like I need to rest. I need to take accountability, and that can really do a lot of good. But be appropriate about it. Sorry is different than an amends as well. Sorry is a word, not an action. Remorse is more of an action. So I think I'm going to just end off by looking at this word remorse. I do actually want to talk about Oscar Pistorius in a separate analysis, but there it is.
Remorse.
What is remorse? It's not just shallow, superficial. It's not just, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. It's deep regret or guilt for a wrong committed. That is what it really is, right? And it goes without saying, it needs to be genuine. It's real regret, not acted regret, right? And shame as well. The feeling I got was that Hannah felt ashamed, but she didn't really feel remorse. And so one of the biggest symptoms, mark my words when I say this, one of the biggest symptoms, one of the critical clues to someone showing remorse is telling the truth, is where someone says, I'm so sorry. Do you know what? This is actually what happened. This happened and that happened, and I didn't mean to do that, but this is what really happened. That is someone showing real remorse. And with that, telling the truth is a release of emotion, right? That is a big, big sign of someone showing remorse, is when they tell the truth. You can't show remorse without telling the truth. You can't feel remorse without being truthful. Look at those words: deep regret or guilt for a wrong committed. I realize I've done something wrong. I'm so sorry. Penitence. So it comes with guilt. And so in a big way, people refuse to be guilty. People refuse to admit that they did something wrong. People refuse to acknowledge a mistake. Let's just go through just a couple of those words there. Look at them. Sorrow, shame, self-reproach, self-accusation, self-condemnation, contriteness, ruefulness, feelings of guilt, penitence, repentance. I don't get the feeling Hannah feels guilt whatsoever. I feel like she feels bad about what happened, but that feeling of guilt is simply replaced by who's to blame, who can I blame, whose fault is this, how can I get out of it, how do I minimize it? Where does that come from in our society, that instinct, that automatic thing where you try and jump out of accountability? In other words, automatic denial, which makes you essentially like not a human being. It makes you automatically a liar. It makes you automatically a dishonest person. Where does that dishonesty come from? It's partially in our society. Where does it come from? Does it come from social media? Does it come from upbringing? Does it come from narcissism? Does it come from, where does it come from? That selfishness. Maybe a lot of it is parenting. I mean, I didn't see Hannah's mother in court. And I remember Hannah's mother when she was in court the previous time. Where does that thing come where you can say, you know what, I feel, and Hannah did actually say, I feel so ashamed on court, on the body cam. She said something about, I feel so ashamed, I'm the armorer. But it didn't seem to be, it seemed to be different to because I am wrong. It seemed to be because this has happened and I'm embarrassed. It's shame in a sense where you can tell the truth and say this is what really happened. So parents need to bring up children who can say, who are taught, you need to take accountability for this. You need to say, I did this and I was wrong, and then I won't do it again, right? I was guilty, I'm wrong, it was my mistake, I won't do it again. And that's where kind of the, religion is quite useful, because it does ask us to confess our sins, to repent, right? But what about the rest of us? Can we also say when you've done something wrong? And can we feel bad about it? Anyway, I think I'm done. Shaker Maker, thank you very much. I didn't thank Maria. Thank you very much for that. Maria, let's just bring up your super chat. Appreciate it. That's definitely going into the America coffer. Definitely going into the America coffer, the America piggy bank. So, I appreciate that very much. Mods, thanks a lot for being here. It is a thing that I want to bring up more and more and more, is what is the source of the criminal impulse? Where does this inhumanity to man come from? Where does the criminal impulse come from? Where does this thing where you don't care about another person come from? Does it come from the way we've been treated? Does it come from our upbringing? Where does it come from? Something to think about, something to talk about. Karen says, we don't have a lot of responsible examples among powerful people. That's such a fantastic point. Are our leaders accountable? Are our leaders honest? Do our leaders teach us to lie and deny and pass the buck? Absolutely. Oren Lee says it comes a lot from the selfie-taking age we lived in since the social media. People have become a lot more self-centered. People have become a lot more selfish. Elise, good to see you here. Elise says, lovely mods and everyone, just saw you, wanted to say hello. Okay. I do agree so much with that a lot of this just comes from one basic thing, denial. Right? We live lives of denial. We deny the truth about so many different things. We are so conditioned to believe whatever we want to believe, to think whatever we want to think. There are so many YouTubers out there that profit from telling you that they try and intuit what you want to hear, and then they tell you what you want to hear. So when do you ever think about what's really going on? And so in terms of when you have done something wrong, it's so tempting and easy to say, well, I don't want to believe I'm wrong, so I'm not wrong. Oh, okay. Think about that. I don't want to believe that I did anything wrong. Somebody told me I didn't do anything wrong, so I didn't do anything wrong. You know what? It's nice to think that I didn't do anything wrong and that someone else did. Okay, so that's what I believe. Where does that lazy way of thinking come from? Well, doesn't it come from everywhere? Thanks a lot, Robbie. Thanks a lot. Anyway, I hope this has been a useful kind of communication to you guys on the subject. I think it's really important to cover this topic in terms of the true crime thing in general, in terms of this case specifically, but also in terms of us. What do we, when we take this case, someone's been sentenced, it's not just pointing the finger, it's also saying, what do we take from this? Final thing I want to say is what's so fascinating about the Rust case is you've got two defendants, one with no agency, one with maximum agency, one who feels she's got no power, she's helpless, she's trying to ambitiously use an opportunity to advantage another person who's got huge amounts of power, almost like unlimited power, and yet both of them amount to the same thing. It wasn't me, it's not my fault, I'm not sorry. Do you feel guilty? No, I don't feel guilty. And so does agency have anything to do with guilt or remorse? No. It's your humanity. Do you have humanity? If you don't, where are you going to get it? Can you get your humanity back if you've lost it? I would say no. I think it's very hard to do that. But let's not get to that point. Let's keep our humanity. Let's continue caring for one another. Anyway, that is it from me. Thanks, guys, for being with me. I will see you guys again tomorrow for the next live stream. Take care. Thanks, mods, so much. And thanks for everyone who gave super chats. I've got to admit that I do need them, and every bit counts. Thanks very much for that. Take care, guys. See you guys next time. Thanks, Maria.